couple more civil rights cases for you. Attorney Joe Tacopina.
Always, Reverend.
Thank you for being with us. Joining me now here on set is NBC legal analyst Catherine Christian. She is a former assistant DA in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Let's start with the sentencing. Scheduled for July 11th, 4 days before the Republican convention. What are the possible penalties and what are the likely penalties in your opinion?
Well, the possible, that's easy. It's no time. The judge could say time served. The judge can give him a conditional discharge, which is also no time. And the condition being you have to pay a fine. The maximum fine he could impose would be $5,000. And community service. I don't see that. Are we really going to have the former president going around cleaning in the parks, which years ago, people who might remember Naomi Campbell was sentenced to that.
Yeah.
Or it could be jail, and jail means a year or less. So Rikers Island, 30 days. Or it could be the maximum is up to 4 years, which it means state prison, Attica, Sing Sing. Or it could be probation, where you would have to report to probation. This is going to be a tough decision for the judge.
Is it possible to get home confinement?
Or that's not really a sentence that's given in New York, but a judge has discretion to do that as sort of like a part of your conditional discharge would be that, meaning you can only go, basically he won't be locked in Trump Tower, but he'd be limited. And I could see the judge not doing that because he is, assuming he's not sentencing to prison, running for office. But it's going to be hard because there are mitigating circumstances. I can only think of two. One, he's 78 years old, and the other one, he has no prior criminal convictions. But then you have all the aggravating circumstances.
So his lawyers could argue he's 77, 78 years old, but I thought he was the youngster in the race.
His lawyers aren't going to argue that.
I thought they were arguing that
them.
Biden was old. Now they're going to have to argue he's old?
He won't let them do that. That's the problem. You know, if I were representing him, you know, which I wouldn't be, but you would say, Your Honor, my client is 78 years old. He's not going to let them do that. The aggravating circumstances is he has 3 open indictments in 3 different jurisdictions. He has civil liability. He was found liable for sex abuse,
right,
for defamation, for fraud, involving the Trump University, involving the Trump Organization. So, and he's also violated this own judge's gag order multiple times. He violated the gag order in the civil fraud trial. So those are a lot of aggravating circumstances that might lean to, okay, you're someone who should get some type of incarceration.
Now, he, when he left the courthouse the other day, is he on parole?
No, well, there was no bail set, so he's just free, because on an e-felon in New York, not to get in the weeds, you can't set bail. So he's out, and he's been returning to court anyway. All
right, Trump has promised to appeal. Does this mean he is unlikely to face any real punishment in this case prior to the election? Does he have a strong case, in your opinion, for an appeal? Well,
he has issues for an appeal. So I can't say you always have issues, but he's going to appeal the jury instructions. He's going to appeal that he was kept from testifying because the judge is allowed the prosecutor to ask him about certain bad acts. That's a loser because the judge was very good on that. So the appeal, he has 30 days after his sentence to file a notice, and it'll be up to his lawyers how fast that appeal will go, because there are going to be deadlines scheduled for them to file briefs. And if everyone files everything on time, it could be heard by January of 2025. People think that's a long time away, but that's actually short in the appellate land in New York.
Now, you have heard Trump's repeated claims that he is being treated worse than any other defendant because of his politics. But I can't help but think of former Baltimore prosecutor Marilyn Mosby, who was sentenced last week to 12 months of home detention, 3 years of supervised release, and 100 hours of community service for 1 count of perjury and 1 count of mortgage fraud. Trump, meanwhile, is free to travel and campaign while he awaits sentencing. He continues to speak out about the case in spite of a gag order. And as we've said, it's unclear he will ever face justice, given the timing of the appeals process and the upcoming election. Isn't it the case that Trump is actually being treated more leniently than the average defendant?
How many, and we're familiar with the criminal justice system, how many defendants have 4 open indictments in 4 different jurisdictions who are free? So just even starting with that, and all of the chances he received from violating, gag orders, So we can just start with that in my opinion, he has been treated very differently. And the sad part of former DA Mosby is that the prosecutor actually asked for 20 months in prison.
Yeah.
So she thankfully had a judge who was kind and fair and said, no, I'm not putting this woman in prison.
But if you compare her to Trump, I mean, we see the difference. Lastly, I must ask you about the Supreme Court. On Thursday, Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts declined an invitation to meet with the Democratic senators to talk about the court's ethical controversies, including the upside-down American flag that flew outside Justice Samuel Alito's home. That flag was also flown by January 6th insurrectionists. And I couldn't help but notice that same flag popped up again this week, being flown by Trump supporters demonstrating after the announcement of Trump's guilty verdict. Now, the issue of Supreme Court justices being viewed as partisan has been a problem for a while. But this seems like something beyond that. Do you think it's a mistake for the Chief Justice not to engage in a real dialogue about it?
Or at least put out a statement. They created their own code of ethics, the Supreme Court did. But he's going to do, as he did, separation of powers. I don't have to show up to Congress because we're separate than you. But there should be something.
Congress funds the Supreme Court.
And, you know, the confidence in the court is being eroded by the public because of, let's just say, certain members on that court.
All right, Attorney Catherine Christian, thank you for being with us tonight. Coming up, Trump's indictment played a pivotal role in the Republican primaries. Now his